All right, sweet. So we're streaming on YouTube on the Raw channel for anyone that wants to join there, and then we'll be streaming also on Discord. If there's a storm going on right now, so shouldn't lose connection, but if I do, that may be why. The other reason is maybe I blue screen again, since I blue screened at the end of that last class, but I think I fixed everything that was going wrong. Alrighty, so before we move forward, I want to make sure we get the slow stuff out of the way. So we're going to be using and talking about Postman. I'm going to put the link in here. If you don't have Postman yet, go ahead, download, install it. Also, we're going to be using Python. If you don't have Python, go ahead, download, install it. You should, because we're expecting you to know Python. If we're also going to be using npm, so if you don't have npm, go ahead and download and install it. This is not a good one for Windows users. I guess I should just do Node.js download. There we go. So go ahead and download that. Also, additional packages. Make sure on npm you install React and Next.js. So React install. This should be if the page will ever load. It should just be this command to get React going, and then npm install Next.js. And if you're going to be doing Next.js, then get, oh, this is actually a better command right here. Perfect. You'll need all of that, and I don't think we'll touch on Redux, this one, and Flask for Python. So make sure you do pip install Flask. I'll just write that in, pip install Flask. Okay, so let's do some clarification first on what full stack entitles. Full stack means you are capable of doing everything. It's a pretty difficult role for people to first get into. Not like on the scale of difficulties, it's not like extremely difficult. It's just difficult in the sense that there's a lot of uptime because you need to learn potentially a lot of different things, especially if you want to make a robust application that's also secure. So what is in a full stack? Usually it's a 3-tiered system. Depending on who you talk to, it's a 3-tiered. Other people will say it's two-tiered, or it just depends on like what you're doing. Let me change this font to be a little larger. That apply. There we go. So this will be the user, usually a website. This is going to be your middleware, and this is going to be your backend. So usually the backend and the middleware are going to be server side, so that will be on your actual server. Typically it's wrote, like for example what we're going to be doing, it's going to be in Python. A lot of times if the application is kind of small, then it's going to be pretty much the exact same thing. There's really no distinction between the middleware and the backend. Specifically, the middleware usually encompasses all of your endpoints and then the initial logic in those endpoints. Finally, if you're not familiar with them, you are using the HTTP protocol. So HTTP, methods. So you're using the HTTP protocol, which means you need to learn, know, and follow the HTTP request methods in your endpoints in order to make sure you're complying to standards. Technically, you can get by without complying to the standards just fine, but you should stick with the standards. If you're not familiar with this at all, you need to learn it. This is extremely crucial to you doing anything in regards to full stack or front end development. So usually this, if you just want to do the website or what the user sees, this is going to be called traditionally front end development. And then this stuff here is usually just called the back end development. And if you know how to do both, that's the full stack. So it's full stack, more complex because you need to know how to do the full stack. Are there any questions on this before we move forward? No questions. All right, sweet. All right, so where to begin? Up to you, 100%. You can begin with the front end and move forward and make your whole site and make all the functionality with dummy data without hooking up to any backend just fine. Or you can start with the backend and then develop the whole backend and then create the front end to hook up to all the backend plugins. That is also fine. It's totally up to you and depending on the scenario and what you have going on. Both are completely fine. For right now, we'll just go ahead and start with the front end and then we'll move over to the back end. So how this structure looks professionally, let me see if I'll just use the brush because good painting skills. Usually, ideal scenario, you'll have a server that is going to hold your actual website that's running and the user will ping that to get the website. You'll also have a separate server. Ideally, these could be on the same server, but ideally they'll be separated out. That will host the backend and what's going on the backend. Now, sometimes depending on the architecture you're doing, the middleware will also be on its own server. But the flow of this is user hits website, website may hit the backend to grab data to then put it and load it on the page to then give it back to the user. And depending on the website's logic, it may directly reach back out to the backend to get more or additional data. When the data goes from the backend straight to the so when the user requests a page from the server, from the website server, to get something loaded, if this website server ever calls to the backend and gets data, that's called server-side rendering because you're rendering the data from the backend server on the site before giving it to the user. Server-side rendering should make sense. And then if the server is not rendering the data from the backend and the client reaches out specifically to the backend to get that data, that will be client-side rendering. I think there's another term for it also. We'll figure out here in a second. So two different things to be aware of. All right. So also, if you're not running VS Code, download and get VS Code. VS Code. Does everyone here have VS Code?
Yo, I have VS Code, but I don't have the iReact, the install next React stuff, Flask.
Did you download, do you have Python installed and do you have Node.js installed?
Yeah, I have both of those installed now.
Perfect.
I have Python installed previously though.
Perfect. We'll move forward with that. So everyone get a blank screen here. And before we move forward, extensions. Extensions are the best part about VS Code, and it is what actually makes everything you do powerful. So first, you need to get rid of the default icons because they're absolutely ugly. So in here, type in material, and you should get this that shows up, material icon theme. Go ahead and install this. After you install it, there should be a drop down that shows up here. If it doesn't, click on this button here to set the file icon themes. Do this. Everything will look better and you'll understand where everything is a lot easier. All right. After that, we're going to need some React extensions. So let me look exactly. Go ahead and install ES7 plus React Redux. This guy right here. Can I share links to it? No. Can I copy name? Perfect. After getting that, go ahead and get ESLint. I don't think you guys actually need this one, but whatever. Get it. Go ahead and get it. Let's see here. Go ahead and get this. We won't go into Tailwind. Let's see. We're also going to be doing Python, so make sure you have these two for Python. If you install Pylance, it should automatically install this plugin also, but I'll put them both in there. You'll need the React Native tools. Simple React snippets. And that should be good to get started.
If you search React, the top 3 tools should be the ones that you need.
So if I'm doing anything and I get certain pop-ups that you're not getting, let me know and I'll look through my plugins again. But this should cover pretty much everything you guys need for right now. Alrighty. Better comments. This is kind of not related, but I highly recommend it. It will color coordinate your comments. So can I zoom in on this? No. Basically, if you in your comments that you make in any of your code, if you do special symbols beforehand, it will color code them based off if you use an exclamation mark or question mark or type in to do, so forth. So it'd be easier to find like certain comments. All right, everyone good on that and ready for us to move forward?
I'm good.
Everyone else good? All right, so let's go ahead and open a folder. Let's go ahead and make a new application. We'll go ahead and go to, you can do this wherever you want. I think I was just using this the other day, so I'll just use this one again. And I'll go ahead and delete these guys in here because I don't need them. All right, so you should have a screen that kind of looks like this. Once you do, go ahead and if you do Control tilde, so it might look like this for you. If you do Control tilde on your keyboard, you'll get your terminal show up. Once you have your terminal show up, if you have npm installed and working correctly, if you type in npm and enter, you should get the help menu to print out. If you don't get this print out, say something now, or else hold your peace forever. Okay, where's
Control tilde for me just pops up the theme browser.
You're not holding shift, right?
No.
Oh, is it by default Control Shift tilde?
I think so. Yeah, it is.
Oh, for me, I just do Control tilde. I must have set it up like that. I don't know. But regardless, that's how you can get your terminal to show up. Let me go and close out a couple of these. So we're going to be making the front end with Next.js. Why Next.js? Because it does a lot of beautiful stuff for us automatically. If all you know is React or the basics of React, that will be just fine. If you barely know React or don't even know what React is, but you know some basic JavaScript, that's just fine. You'll get by for this one, but you're going to want to spend some time afterwards learning React specifically, and then some of the nuances of Next.js. So best way to make a default application is to Google it, because Google as a dev is our god, and we all praise and hail Google. They are the one true savior, and they make us proper devs because we have to use them. If Google wasn't around, we couldn't dev anything. All right. Yeah, it's NPM, not MPM. All right, so we're gonna want to, can I get a blank application? I think it's just create next app. Here we go. We don't want TypeScript. That one should be good. All right, so I'll go ahead and paste this, enter, and if it works functionally for me, I will paste this in the events chat so you guys can run it first. We'll call this hello world. It needs to have attack. Looks like this is working properly, so I'll go ahead and paste in this command. And that will take a second to set everything up. Okay, so while that's getting set up and you guys run that command, what's going on here? Did you install Node.js?
Yeah, I installed it. And it's supposed to just automatically start working.
Did you just install it, or did you have it installed prior?
Oh no, I just installed it.
So you might have to close VS Code completely, and any terminal windows that you have, close them completely and then reopen them.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna do that right now.
All right, let me know if that works. All right, this is probably going to take you guys a little bit. It's just complete on me. Yes, we're going to be doing Python also. We're doing full stack. We're starting with the front end right now. So once everything is completed, you should have a new folder. So you'll literally have...
Elijah, could you do a Control Plus in your VS Code? Make it a little bit bigger.
There you go. Is that better for you guys?
Yeah.
You know, it would be better if you guys just had four key monitors like me.
Oh, I
right?
can see it fine. I'm just saying, hey.
All right, so you'll get a folder that's generated called Hello World, and then there you'll see a bunch of stuff. This is what we're going to use to move forward. They basically do all the hard work for you, so now you're ready to start rolling along with no issues. All right. Rico, how's it going?
I just named it Hello World, and then I think it's installing something. React DOM, next.
Okay, so it's working now.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, let me know when that's done, so we're all synced up for the Patreon members. Leo, you're in here also. Are you following along?
Yes, I am.
All right. Are you done with this step?
Yes.
All right, sweet. Marico, just let us know when you're done, and then we'll start moving forward. I didn't even realize I have a Jupyter tab.
So is I guess while he's doing that, is Node.js essentially just would you consider it a wrapper, or would you consider it an API for JavaScript?
Node.js is the ungodly devil-spawned interpreter program that allows you to do things you're not supposed to in JavaScript, but now you're allowed to do. It is why you're able to use stuff like React and run JavaScript also as the backend for your server and everything. It basically turns JavaScript in a programming language that can work outside of the browser. So, history lesson, JavaScript, I think it was called ES Script originally? Regardless, it was created for the web and the browser only originally. It, along with HTML, were for rendering stuff on a browser and then allowing you to use a programming language in the browser to program out things. Its initial development and concept was never meant to be a standalone language, but it has always been an ugly monster with languages built on top of the language, which React is a good example. Prior, jQuery was the big thing, and so that's why it's a ugly beast today. But it's still the web standard. WebAssembly is now out, so you might see other things pop up that will fully replace JavaScript in the future, but right now there's no good alternative. Luckily though, JavaScript and the plugins like React and Next.js, their packages that have came around have actually made it really fast and easy to develop web applications in JavaScript now. It's actually quite impressive because I first was getting into web development about 10 years ago, and my God, it's so easy now compared to how it used to be. All right, so we all good now? We're all on the same page, Rico? Eco?
No, this thing just went. It said it stopped. It said I have to run npm install g whatever to update, and so I'm doing it, and then it just gave some error.
Can you post the error? Yeah, well, CSS is so nice now because I came from the age where CSS3 wasn't out, and then it came out and it didn't support half the things that it supports now. Hold on, let's see here. New minor version of npm.
So I copied and pasted that the npm install they told me to do to update it,
Yeah.
and then it just threw that error. Rejected by my operating
You
system.
need to probably run it as admin. So pull up PowerShell, but don't pull it up. Or you need to either right click on it to run it as admin, or you can click on the box here, run as admin. And once you have that in there, then go ahead and run that. And this is the command that it outputted.
I'm on a Mac.
You
Then
can do it with a terminal as well. He has to do
sudo.
sudo.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has to do sudo.
Yeah, so here's the command for that you need to run on Mac. You can run it in
So open up
VS Code on your Mac. Just run it like this.
The bottom one, right? Not the top one.
Yeah, the bottom one that says sudo at the beginning. You can run that. It's gonna ask for probably your Mac's password. Just enter that in and press enter.
Okay. Okay, yeah. And
I'm confused on why you got that error because I'm on 8.9.
then I run that second line.
Yes, VS Code does run in Linux.
Okay, the first one, like it like worked, and then I ran that second line again, and it's not working.
Well, you don't need
It
the
threw it.
second line. Go and rerun the original one I gave you. Where is it? This, I'll repaste it in. Go and rerun this.
Oh, okay. Bam. World.
Next.js is a framework that's built on top of React. So it's React, but actually super easy and usable. You'll see here in a second, but it's all pretty much, yeah, all the functionality is normal React. There's just a couple different things that are for Next.js, but if you don't know the difference between React and Next.js, I'm going to show you this, and if you ever look up videos on how, like on React, or how to do a starter project in React vanilla, you're going to be like, why? Why is it like this? Why is it not like Next.js?
All right, it's downloading again.
All
I
right.
guess it had a problem with me naming it Hello World.
All right, sweet. Okay, so I was saying earlier, CSS history lesson. CSS back in the day was way more cancerous. So some of you guys probably are too young to know this, but back in the day, CSS did not have support for easy switching between different size screens. So essentially, you would have to make one CSS style sheet for your main site, and then rewrite and remake the entire thing for a mobile device. It was super cancerous, and usually the sites were separated out where, like, for example, if you went to Facebook, you would go to facebook.com on everything except if you were on a mobile device. This includes tablets. Instead, it would auto redirect you to m.facebook.com because that was the mobile version of the site, because you literally had to make two different applications for the mobile and the front end because there was no easy way to make one that worked on both. That was pretty prevalent until recent years. Yeah, so you don't have to do that anymore because things have progressed so far. So it's really nice. All right, so you're good to go. If you open up the folder, you should see this layout. So if you guys are familiar with Node.js packages, you'll see you have your package.json. This will basically just show the dependencies you have and then also the commands you're allowed to run. So we're allowed to run dev, build, start, and lint. We'll only be using dev, and maybe we'll go over build and start also. If you need a rundown also of the commands, they're right here. So essentially the commands is npm run, and then this right here, this one says dev, but this is the one that you can interchange between these items, build or start. So this could say dev, build, or start right here. So if we go ahead right now and we just run this command, npm run dev in the command line, and press enter, your page will, so once you did this, you're going to need to cd into the new project that you made. So you'll just do cd and then hello world if you named it hello world, or whatever you named it. And then once you're in there, do npm run dev, and it will just take a second, but your actual server with your site, the default site, will start running right now. And this is usually the default link. It's going to be localhost 3000. You can either click it, you can copy and paste this URL into your browser, or you can just click it right here. And if we look, this is the default site. So we have a fully functional site right now, and a server running on Next.js, and this is what it looks like. This is just the default stuff, super awesome. Don't stop this. Next.js and React are super cool because they allow for hot reloading. So we can simply have two screens. On one side we can have our web browser, and the other side we can have our web server running. Now, you would never want to deploy your website with this command, because this command is doing everything like just in time, last second. It's very laggy and slow. So if you notice that you've made some functions or different logic on your website and it runs kind of slow in this dev environment, or loading certain pages are slow, don't worry. It's probably just like that in the dev environment. When you go to production, it may be faster. And that's what the other two commands were for. So when you want to go to production, that's what you use the other two commands for. So npm run build will basically, quote unquote, compile your site up to be ready to get ready for an actual deployment to an actual live server. And that takes usually a second. You guys don't need to run this because it's going to be probably pretty slow. Like you can see, it's pretty slow on mine. So it's all built out, and now I can do a npm run start, which is this command. And now this is a fully live server that will be very, very fast. But this does not have hot reloading because this is a quote unquote compiled up site. So we want to just use npm dev run during this. All right. So your log file, don't worry about that. Next.js config, you don't need to worry about this stuff right now. I have no clue why this is giving me an error. But we'll just move on. Your git ignore, it will generate a normal, a default git ignore for you. So if you're pushing this up to git, it will ignore all the files that you don't need to push up, so you don't bloat your git and you don't push sensitive things like your passwords that you have in your environmental variables. So styles, this is where you put all your styling. This is just normal CSS. And then public, these are all your public items that aren't web pages. So photos, videos, anything else you want. Anything that goes in this directory will be accessible exactly in the hierarchy that you set it up in. So what I mean is if you set up folders, it will automatically set up that hierarchy and it will be available to end users. And the hierarchy is if you're on the web browser and you want to view the favicon.icon, in the web browser, if you do /favicon.ico, you'll get that file. Same thing with the Vercel SVG. If we change that to vercel.svg, I'll get that file. So anything you put in here will be directly accessible to the end user. So just be aware of that. Other quick history lesson, Facebook makes and maintains React. They developed React and they're the ones who own React. So anything with React is going to be by Facebook. Next.js is made by Vercel. So anything that you see reference to Vercel is because it's a Next.js thing. Next, and the last folder, these ones that are grayed out, you don't need to worry about those. It's just these ones that only matter, is your pages. Works very similar to the public section, but these are your pages. These pages are live, up and running, and they will dynamically hot reload when you change stuff on the page. So index.js is always the default web page. So instead of doing .html in this, you'll do .js at the end of everything, or you could do a .jsx. It's totally up to you. But if we go in here and I want to, let's say, remove this stuff right here, and let me go and close off this main tag, and I save this, it should hot reload. I don't know why I didn't hot reload. It was probably just bugging out, but you'll see that the page is completely different right now. All I did was refresh the page, but hot reloading should be working now. So if I add some stuff and do Control S, you'll see it immediately shows up on the page. So now hot reloading is back in sync and it's working for me. Why Babel? I thought I fixed this.
Yeah, I'm getting that error too, but
yeah, it's because of the default interpreter thing on Babel. Yeah, I have this. I literally uninstalled this. Hold on. I want to fix this because it's going to give me cancer. Is this? Yeah, this is from Babel also. Language mode. It's already. Is there a React mode? Oh, there we go. JavaScript React. Is that gonna fix it? No.
No.
Okay, well, there is a way to fix that and get rid of the Babel crap. I'm not going to spend time on it right now, but it's going to make our files look ugly because they're going to have that red thing here. If anyone wants to look it up and figure out in the meanwhile, that would be awesome. I had to reload VS Code. How do I pull up those folders and files again? You should have a folder in here called Hello World or whatever you named your project. All right. Let me know when you get this all reloaded. And actually, while you're doing that, let me Google this real quick. Code.
Create a file called .babelrc.
Is it expecting a .babel? Right here. Can I just? But why?
It's the linter.
Yeah, but I thought I just changed that. Or is it the linter I had you guys download, the ESLint?
Yeah, it needs to extend Babel.
If you disable it, does that fix the issue?
I don't know. I just added the next /Babel to the linter. Yes, lintrc dot.
No, it's the plugin.
Is it? Oh, the linter. Okay.
Yeah, so in your plugins, just type in the ESLint, and you can go and just disable it, and it will also pop a button that says a reload is required. Click on that button to reload, so that way you don't get those errors anymore. All right, perfect. Now I don't have to give myself cancer with those errors. All right, Mariko, you good? Mariko. So throughout this, I'm gonna assume you guys know basic HTML.
No, it didn't pop back up.
Well, what do you mean it didn't pop back up? If you go to new, open
That
recent,
folder's gone.
you should be able to go to.
I'm trying to create another one right now.
I think you just opened it in the wrong location. But moving forward with your guys' the plugins that you got in, you'll see a lot of auto completion stuff. So if you're trying to make tags, if you open a tag and click on P, it should. I guess not all the time. Sometimes it will auto make it, but if you close, it will automatically make the closing tag, and then you can go ahead and make some cool text in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. So we're gonna make pretty simple front ends with reaching out to our backend server, and we're just going to display some data here at the front. So what we'll go ahead and do is in our styles in this home, let's go ahead and just delete all of this because we don't want that anymore. And let's go to global and delete all of this. There we go. You should get a nice page like this. Very nice. It's very modern looking. Instead, what we can do if we want a good base item, it's always great to go with just Bootstrap, but you can't just use normal Bootstrap in the project. You need to use Bootstrap React. Bootstrap React. So if you Google Bootstrap React, we'll go ahead and get started. And this is the command you need to run. So I'll paste that in the chat. Go and stop the server here. I'll go ahead and run that command. We're going to keep this up, React Bootstrap, because I'll be looking at the wiki sometimes. All right,
You
so
need to install that in the main directory or the Hello World.
Just just make sure you're inside the not the parent Hello World, but this Hello World directory here where all
Okay,
your
the
files
site.
are in. Yeah,
the actual
and
site
just
is.
and just run npm install. That's all you have to do. And once you bring your site back up, you'll see that your site has changed because now it's using Bootstrap, CSS, and it should. I think we're missing one last part. We have to add an import statement, this one right here. So in our
That's
apps,
global.
our underscore app.jss, go ahead and paste this line right in there. And once you do, Bootstrap will be applied. There we go. Now it doesn't look as cancerous, and Bootstrap is being applied. So Bootstrap just gives us a bunch of CSS items that are already pre-made and look pretty good out of the box. So we'll go ahead and use that. Everyone good? Tracking so far?
Right.
All right. So we're going to make this front-end site reach out to the backend server and have this text right here be generated from the backend server. So super basic. We're going to ping out to the backend server and generate text right here from the backend server. So we'll go ahead now and move over to making, we'll go ahead and move over to making the backend server now. So everyone good here with the React project? Any other questions? No questions? All right, we're moving forward. So on File, up here, click on New Window. That's how you can make a new VS Code window. And then in here, we can go and open our folder, and I'm going to go back to that same Hello World. Come on. Why didn't you open? Desktop, Hello World. Okay, it's bringing me back here. So I'm going to go into Hello World. And in here, I'm going to make a new folder called Backend. And then I'll select that. There we go. So now we have, in this, we have something called the backend, and we have something called Hello World. Hello World is our front end, and the backend is going to be our Python backend. So in here, we're going to be making our Python stuff. So we're going to be utilizing Flask. So by default, Flask uses or looks for a file called app.py, which is different than the typical main.py you are looking for. So we'll go ahead and just make something called app.py. So it's super straightforward and easy. Now, Flask, if you haven't installed it yet, go ahead and pull up your terminal, and we'll do Python Flask. Pretty sure it's just a pip install Flask. Why on the quick start do you not show me the install? There we go. So there we go. Yeah, it's just a pip install Flask. So go and run this command. If you haven't already, just run the command in here, pip install Flask. Yeah, so go to your extensions and look for ESLint and disable it. And once you disable it, make sure you click on the new box that shows up that says reload. And that error will go away. All right, everyone good with Flask right now? All right, so minimal application. This is perfect. Let's go ahead and grab that, paste that in here. We have a Flask app. Oh, I didn't paste that. Let me put the Python code right here. Here's a minimally viable Flask application. So we'll go ahead and grab that. To run your Flask app, you now, instead of doing Python and then running the app .py, you just type in Flask and run. So once you do that, you'll see another link here. This is the same thing, localhost, except it's different. This one runs on 3000. Your backend server is going to run on port 5000. So if we run that, we should be getting our page back, but we're not because I'm running another server. Hold on, I need to turn off this server. All right, sweet. Now this should work. Perfect. We're going to get that. So this default one is kind of emulating a web server with web pages. We're not going to be doing web pages. Instead, we're going to make this an API endpoint. So API endpoints, when you ping them, you're going to always expect JSON data. And Flask is super awesome because if you make a dictionary in Python, so we'll say my cool dick, and make a dictionary, it should automatically convert this into the corresponding JSON code. So in here, we'll just say results, and it worked. Now, if we refresh our page, we get our new page. This is proper. It doesn't really look proper, but I promise. Sorry, this is not proper. We need to quit the Flask server. I don't know why. I swear Flask used to do hot reloading, but it doesn't do hot reloading anymore. So we're just going to need to rerun Flask. And now if we refresh, you'll see that we are getting the proper results here. Now, you can totally look at your results in a browser for the backend, and that will work just fine. But the thing is, with using a browser, it's only really easy to evaluate the backend code when it's GET requests, because that's what your browser does by default, is a GET request. But we might need to do POST requests or various other types of requests. So that's where Postman comes into clutch. So if you open up Postman, we can utilize this to test our backend API. Now, you won't have all these items here because these are just from other stuff, but go in and open up Postman. And once you have Postman open up, you'll click on this button right here to create a new collection. I'm going to call this Hello World. Awesome. Let me know when you're on this same page before I move forward.
I'm just fixing my Flask, so you can continue.
Well, I need the rest of the Patreon members. Eco.
Yeah, I'm trying to open it right now. The
Okay.
Postman.
You don't need to sign in. If it's your first time opening Flask, you don't need to sign in. At the very bottom, it's going to be like faded. There's a link there that says just continue without signing in. Just click on that. You can create an account and sign in if you want. There's no downfall of that. basically, if you create an account, anything that you make in Postman will be synced across to any other Postman applications you have, since everything gets backed up to your account. I don't. I don't know what you mean by that, Zane. Your web server and your backend should be able to run at the same time because they're on different ports. One's on 5,000 and one's on 3,000. All right, Eco, you good now?
Yeah, I have it open,
All right. Did you make a collection?
but I don't think I have the backend portion that you were talking about.
This
So I was
right-
still working on that some other thing.
This right here that I have on my screen,
Yeah, the Pi cache.
PyCache. No, you don't need this. This is auto-generated. So Python will automatically generate a PyCache folder under certain circumstances. Basically, it's compiled Python code, so that way things run faster than usual. This is auto-generated. You can ignore that. All you need is the app.py file.
Yeah, I don't have that either. I don't think I generated it right.
Do you have
Yeah, how'd you do that part?
Okay, so to go over again, you should have two windows right now. So this is the front end, and you can, if you click on New Window here, you can then, wherever you want, I put it in the Hello World folder also, but you can make this wherever you want. Make a new folder for your Python code in here. Just make a blank app.py and then paste this code in it. I'm going to put this updated code inside of the chat. And that's all you got to do.
All right, sorry, this is just super hard because I'm on a laptop and I have to keep going back and forth from each screen. So
Technically,
you did the new window and then
technically,
new
if you
file?
want to make it easier for you in your web application, so here where your web app is, the easiest thing
Yeah.
for you to do is make a new folder. So here's my web app. I'm going to close that folder, and outside that folder, you can just make a new folder. I already have it here called backend.
yeah, I did that.
Okay, and then just make an app.py. And then
Okay.
in here, go and click on the plus button to get a new
Yeah.
terminal window. And then this terminal window can be for your Python stuff. Just make
Okay.
sure you CD into the backend directory.
Okay. I'm gonna do that right now. And then I paste that Flask stuff in that folder.
Yeah, make sure you do pip install Flask if you haven't already to first install Flask. And once you have that done, then you can do Flask run to run your Flask server.
Okay. All right, one sec.
Yeah, Zane, that's fine. As long as Flask is running, that's all that matters. All right, are you good now? Ego?
Yeah, so I made the app.py. I opened up the new terminal. And then the command is cd.cd or is it cd?
So you open a new terminal, just cd into the new directory, the backend directory you made,
Yeah.
and then do pip install Flask. I pasted the command, I'll paste it again here.
I have to do the CD portion first, though, right?
Yeah, you need to cd into the new directory.
Okay, I did that, and then pip. CD too many arguments? Is that not?
You didn't press enter after cd.
Okay, there we go, and then pip. It's saying command not found pip.
Is this the first time you've installed? I thought you said you had Python installed on here already.
Yeah, I did. I had to do a college course, and that's all we did was Python with Visual Studio Code.
Did you guys never pip install anything?
No.
So
It was just a-
I had to end up using a virtual environment. I also have Python installed, but mine was not working. See if I can help you out real quick.
Well, I'll just send the rootkit video and you can watch it while we move forward real quick. Well, that doesn't make sense. You're on Mac OS, so this won't work for Mac OS. If you type in Python,
Try that in your console,
oh god,
and then try that
oh god,
afterwards.
why are you guys making that's
Listen,
so
I'm just
much
doing
more
right.
complicated?
I'm just making it work because my Python's also not working, so I had to use a virtual environment.
Well, so you need, at least for the Windows users, you need to double check what your default terminal is. I have mine set to PowerShell for everything, and I configure everything for PowerShell. But sometimes, depending on your Windows settings, if you set something up, it will only work on CMD. So you'll need to, on here, you'll need to open a command prompt instead of a PowerShell in order to make some stuff work. But Eco's on Mac OS. Oh, you know what you should try? Try pip3. Eco.
He might have to specify.
Yeah, since you're on a Unix machine.
Yeah.
Alright, it's downloading Flash now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it was.
DNG for the win.
So-
His setup was probably just messed up. You know how fucking Unix is.
While it's doing Flash, make sure you paste this code that I sent in the chat into your file.
What are you? Sorry, I was fixing my virtual environment. What are you passing for the hello world? Are you literally just passing the 127, the localhost 45000
I'm not passing
for your
anything.
request?
Oh,
For your
the
hello world request?
we haven't got there yet on Postman.
All right.
All right, so everyone, let's go to Postman. Go ahead and make a new collection by clicking on the plus button here, and then you can rename that to Hello World. Once you have that, there's going to be a tab here when you click on Hello World that says Variables. Let's go ahead and click on that. We're going to make a new variable to contain our URL just in case if you ever change it or it gets changed on you for some reason, you can just change the URL in this one place and it will change the URL everywhere for your endpoint. So all we do here is we can just type in whatever variable name we want. I'm just going to call this URL. And for its initial value, we can just paste the address for it. So mine is going to be localhost 5000. So I'll go ahead and paste localhost 5000. Now, after doing that, you're going to need to click on save, this save button right here. Doing Control S does not work. I guess it does work. I swear to God, it does not work sometimes. So just make sure the save button has gone like disabled like this. All right, everyone good on that?
Oh yeah.
All right. Once you're good on that, on Hello World, you can right click and add a request. And this is how we can add our new custom requests. So you can call this whatever you want. This is going to be our hello world request. So we'll just call this one hello world also. World. And in here, this button right here is the get request types. So like I told you guys, if you're doing full stack or front end or back end development, you need to get familiar with the HTTP methods that you can call. These are all the different types of methods you can do. You just need to learn about them. The most common ones are just going to be get, post, put, and delete. Those are pretty much the only ones you'll ever really mess with for the most part. So we'll go and go get, because that's what we're going to do. And inside of the request URL, you'll do 2 curly braces, and you should see your URL variable show up. You can just click on that or press tab, and it should autofill. This should work because we're right here on our Flask route. We're just going to the base URL. So this should be it. All we have to do to make our API or use this to ping our API. So now if we click on the send button, you'll see that you'll get a result back that says it works, and it's all going to be in that JSON data. Awesome. That's how we know our API is fully functional. If this returns an error, make sure your actual Flask application is running, and then click on the send button.
Yeah, I'm getting that error. I think it's the Flask. It's giving me a like a squiggly under Flask. Something with Pylance.
Did you?
It says import Flask could not be resolved. Pylance.
Yeah, you didn't import pip install Flask.
Well, installed it. I mean, that's how I even. It says pip install Flask. Yeah, and collecting Flask, and it has a bunch of downloading things. It looks like I did it.
It might be messed up because now you're in a pip env, and your VS Code is out of sync.
Try those 2 commands.
Basically, the pip env is, I don't recommend that at all, but it will work. It should work if you just type in Flask run in the command line like this. But your VS Code might be a little messed up now. So you should ideally get out of the pip v and install it locally. Because I'm pretty sure you just need to run pip 3 for everything in Python 3 instead of just Python or pip like how we can on Windows.
Okay, so I did the 2 commands. The Flask is still like has a little yellow squiggly under it. Is there a way I can reload it?
I would just try to do what Elijah said. If you can't, that's a work. It might be your interpreter might not be selected properly
Yeah.
in VS Code. If you do a Control Shift E, and then you type in Python, you'll see an option for select interpreter. If you choose
Shift
if
Control
yours is
V.
not there, Shift Control E.
I'm pretty sure you can just type exit to exit the environment.
Oh, on the terminal?
Yeah. And press enter.
Okay.
All right. Are you out of the
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Do a pip 3, all one word, pip 3 space install space Flask.
Okay, it's installing something.
All right, now it's working. Yeah, you just need to do, anytime I say pip or I say Python in the terminal, you're going to add 3 at the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah, because, so pluses and minuses, this is good to know and advanced knowledge, especially if at work you're on a Windows machine and at home you're on a Mac or vice versa. Windows, whenever you install Python, it's going to use the path environment, and how it installs on Python is the executable file is literally labeled Python or pip. it's never prefixed with the version number, which is different than Unix machines. All Unix machines will always prefix Python, or sorry, postfix it with the version number. So that's why on Windows, it's a common issue for people not to click that checkbox to add to the path environments, because by default it is unchecked because of the issue of if you have Python 3.8 installed and then you install 3.9, all of your 3.8 will be basically blown away, and it's advanced setup to get both of them working in parallel. But that's not an issue on any Unix machine. By Unix machine, I mean Mac OS and any Linux box, because you can always specify the version number by typing literally Python 3. 3 will always do the latest version of 3, or if you want a lower version, you do 3.5 or whatever. But for some reason, it doesn't work the same way on Windows. All right, you good now?
Yeah, I think the last question I have is on the URL variable.
Yep.
For you, you have like looks, yeah, next to it you have like initial value.
Yeah, you need to fill out initial value. Don't worry about current value. That will appear once you save it.
And should I just paste what you have for your initial value?
If you do Flask run right here, the URL will show up for it. It's going to be
okay.
It's always going to be your local host at port 5000.
All right, I'm doing that right now. It says, cannot locate Flask application, use Flask -- app option. Yeah, it's saying it can't locate the Flask application now.
You just need to do Flask space run.
Yeah, that's what I put in.
All right, and you're in the directory with your Python file.
Yes, Python file.
All right, 1 second. So if you do an ls, your Python file is there.
Let me see what's an LS.
What?
An LS? What is that?
Type in ls and press enter.
Okay.
So it's critical for you, and we're assuming in this class that you know how to use the terminal at a basic level. That is the very first step for learning how to program, is you have to know how to use the terminal.
Okay. We are under back in my app, node models.
So if you type in ls, is the app.py in there?
No.
If it's not in there, then you need to cd into the correct directory.
And that was cd.backend, right?
Wherever you made the directory.
Yeah, that's where I put it.
All right, are you in there right now? If you need to share your
Sounds
screen,
like.
you should share your screen.
All right, let me share it. Well, the sharing the screen, it's not going to work. I've already tried to do this. It just closes it instantly.
It's
With
because you didn't set the permissions. You have to go to your system settings and give permissions to Discord to allow to view your screen. because when you first tried to do that, you must have clicked the deny button instead of the allow or open system preferences to allow it.
Okay, we can just carry on. I'll just watch.
You should. You really should be following along code wise, because you're not gonna remember this if you're not doing it along with. If you what directory are you currently in?
When I did ls, it popped up library backend my
Well,
dash
not on
app.
LS. What is your what right here? What does it
So
say?
if it said backend, type cd space backend.
Right there. So the direct, I'm in documents. Like it's not even. It doesn't say like yours. It says desktop hello world backend or whatever. Mine just literally says Mariko A5 at Mariko's dash air documents.
Oh, okay. That is. Did you make your
Where-
project folder in the documents folder?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, so
Like I haven't used Visual Studio Code at all, other than running like simple like Python apps, like the most simple Python apps.
So-
Like other than that, I have no idea how to use Visual Studio
okay.
Code.
Do me a favor. Where this sidebar is right here, there's the trash can. Click on that. Kill your current session and open a new terminal window so you can get reset because your old types of messed up. Once you do that, type in ls. Do you see a folder called backend?
Yes,
Then cd into backend.
and that's CD space dot.
No, just no dot, just cd space backend. And you can press
Okay.
tab for autocomplete.
All right, it's there.
All right, press enter and do an ls. Is your
App.py.
There you go. So now do a Flask space run.
What you started lagging? What'd you say?
Flask space run.
Okay.
All right. You good now?
And then now it says failed.
What's the error?
So I must it says usage Flash run and then options try Flash run dash help for help. Failed to find Flask application. So I installed Flask on the wrong thing, or
No. Here, run this.
all right. And that failed too.
Did you put the code, this code that I have right here, into that file?
Yeah, in the app.py.
Okay. Then try this.
And then type in password. It says error could not import hello.
Oh, sorry. That should say app. There you go. Rerun it like that.
Another error.
Paste the error into the chat.
But this is like insane doing this on a laptop.
You should have
Oh.
as a dev, you should always have at least 2 monitors.
Yeah, I mean, I had a computer that was working fine, and then one of the ports ended up like failing, so I'm using my laptop today.
Failed to find Flask application or factory in app. So again, sanity check. Look in your app.py, and is the code that I have on my screen exactly what you have in your file?
Yeah, but your file is in. What is it? A dot v e and v. That's where my app.py is in now.
What? Okay, everything in your backend folder, everything inside of it, delete it all. Everything in there, just delete everything.
Okay. So,
And once you
okay,
delete
so-
everything, create a new file called app.py.
Right, how to the permissions. I can show you my screen in the whatever folder, but I just deleted it and it's not in there. So app.py is in the back folder, right underneath the PyCache folder, and then the from Flask import Flask is in there. Yeah, I pasted it in there.
Is
So it
all
looks matched up.
so all this code is in here? All of
Yeah.
this? Okay, so now if you run that command, does it work?
It shouldn't, but I'm gonna run it again because I didn't change anything. No, it doesn't work.
Oh, hold on a second. Okay, try running it like this.
No, nothing's working.
Because your error is basically that you can't find the file.
The app.py file.
Yes.
That's what they're.
No, so it's in the backend folder, app.py,
And that's where you are in the terminal.
and then so above the from Flask import Flask, I see there's like these arrows, right? So it says backend, then there's an arrow to the app.py, then there's another arrow to hello world.
Yeah, that's how it should look.
And, yeah.
And in your terminal, if you type in ls right now, does it display
Mhm.
app.py?
App.py and PyCache.
Okay.
And then I've pasted what you gave me,
All right. Try
and nothing's working.
try rerunning it like this.
Nope, another error.
Type in Flask and press enter.
Okay. Okay, it popped.
Do you see a lot of info for help and how to run everything?
Yeah, like options,
Okay.
app import.
Try Flask space run. Just Flask space run. That's it.
And then that throws an error.
The same error with failed to find Flask application.
Yeah. It says use app colon name to specify one. Find Flask application or factory and model app.
Yeah, which we have already. Okay, do me a favor. In your terminal, type in ls and copy all of the output and the original you running the command and paste it in the events chat so I can see it.
Oh, wait, so you said type in ls and then copy and paste the folders that pop up?
Yeah,
The
copy and
files?
paste all of the output and where you originally ran the command.
So after ls, that pops up,
No,
and
like
then
okay, so that okay, and okay, now type in the command line, type in cat space app.py and press enter.
cat,
Yeah,
like a cat,
like a kitty cat. Yeah.
and then nothing happened. It just went in.
So you did cat space app.py and press enter,
Yeah.
and nothing got outputted
No.
because
You're
there's
using
nothing in that file.
the
Damn it!
file.
There's nothing in the file. Open the file up and put this code in it.
Double click app.py, the new one, because you're using a different app.py. You're looking at a different.
Well,
I'm gonna strangle
what
you.
other?
So close the whatever app.py that you have open in your and you're looking at right now. Close it. Close it completely, and then double click on the new one, or the one that you see in your file explorer. Did you
I
save the
see.
file? You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch.
We went through every possible thing, and it just came down to he didn't even have the code.
So I was in a different file.
Yes.
You were in the one that was in the virtual environment, yeah. So
Oh,
above, you see
okay.
how it says app.py, right? What that file probably said up there in the top bar was .vnv/app.py. That means that it's a different directory file. So you can have the same name of a file, but the directory.
Okay, so now it's pasted in the right spot.
All right.
Yeah, make sure you save it and then run Flask run.
So you want me to save it? 'Cause I saved it last time, and I think that's what caused the problem.
Yes. Save and then run Flask space run.
It says this is a developmental or development
Yep, that's
server.
running. It's running.
It worked. You're
All right.
congratulations.
Thank God. All right. So on there, underneath the warning, it's going to say running on and then the address it's on. Copy that, and then that's what you paste into your variable in Postman.
Got it.
Man,
Dialed in now.
you're supposed to be trained up on IT stuff, man.
Bro, I have
Hey,
never
you
done
need
any
an
of
IT
this.
course, I got you. Hey, I mess with that shit every day.
All right. So,
So it's in there.
okay.
Current value is still blank though.
Yes, save. So Control S or click on the save icon,
Got it.
and it should autofill in current value.
No.
If you put something in the other.
I did put in the initial value.
Okay. And you saved it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Let's move on to your get request. Did you make this?
I have the get, and then
right. Click on the
something
send.
URL.
Yeah, click on the send.
Send it. Boom.
Do you get a result?
Said bad request.
Okay. It's curly brace URL curly brace.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
For the get.
yeah, for the get. Okay.
Yeah.
Just paste the URL in there. The HTTP, whatever it says, port 5000,
Okay.
and replace the URL thing.
Said results, it worked.
Perfect. Okay, you're getting the results. Basically, okay, so click on your hello world thing and bring up where it has the variable here again. And
Yep.
there's a button here that says persist all. Click on that.
You just erased it.
We'll put the URL in initial value and then click on persist all.
Just erases it.
You have variable says URL, initial value has your the URL to your API endpoint.
Yeah. The one that the terminal gave me or whatever.
Okay, and if you click on persist all, not reset all, persist all.
Yeah. It just gets rid of it.
Okay, I don't know what's going on, but basically for now, you're not going to use the.
So are you making sure when you paste the value in, you are clicking out of that box? Because I just did what I'm assuming you did, where I pasted it in, then I clicked persist all, and then it deleted it. You got to make sure to click out so it saves it, and then click save.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. Clicked enter, clicked out of it, and it shows a little like arrow, like an enter arrow next to it, with like a 3 dots right after.
It shouldn't have that. Okay, regardless, we're going to move on. Don't worry about it. Just whenever I put this URL variable, instead you're going to put the actual URL in its raw format.
Okay.
All right, sweet. But now when you click the send button, you should get that result. It works, and we're on the same page now, correct?
Correct.
All right, sweet. So now let's go back to the web page, and let's go back to our page's index.js. In here, so this is everything in the export default function. React is a functional based language, so basically all of your web pages are going to be functions and inside of functions. So we want to replace this text right here, and instead we want to print out what our web server is giving us. So we're going to make it so it's server-side generated content. So the server, when we request the page, the server will go grab the content from the site, then make the web page for us, and then give us the web page after the fact. So at the very bottom here, there's this is something that's specific to Next.js. It's called get server-side props. So I'm going to go and paste the code, JavaScript. So go and paste that at the very end of your index.js file. And then inside of here, this will allow us to get some server-side props. And return props is us returning whatever we're getting from here back into the web page. Kind of confusing at first, but I'll explain it before we actually get the data that we want from the server. So what we're going to do inside this get server-side props is inside of props here, we'll go ahead and press enter, and we'll make some type of variable. Let's call this, I don't know, fun. Then we'll do colon, and we'll say this is fun, exclamation mark. So it should look like this. Once we have this, we're going to go all the way up. Is everyone good on this before we move forward? All right, so scroll all the way back up to the top, and in function in home, where we are right now, in here, anything that we are returning in props from inside here will be automatically put inside of this guy right here. Now, there's a special way we can auto extract props out of the what's being sent to us. So if we do curly braces inside of here and then we type in fun, this should be the fun item or variable that we're getting. So this should be the way we can extract the fun variable. And then in our code, I'll explain this a little bit more in a second. Just follow along for now. But in our code, go ahead and paste curly brace fun in curly brace. Somewhere in it, it could be in the H1 here, or you can make a p tag like me down here. Just get this guy here. And now if I didn't mess everything up, because I feel like I probably forgot something, if we refresh our page, there we go. We should see something that says this is fun show up on our web page now. Everyone tracking that. While you guys are getting caught, let me scroll. There we go. So now you can see the whole picture. While you guys are catching up and making sure you got it running, let me zoom in on the web page a little bit so you can definitely see I got this is fun here. I'm going to take a piss. Give me 1 second.
So how did he pull up that web page, the localhost 3000?
Yeah, so whenever you run, so do you remember in the beginning where you needed to be to run your website? So if you do npm space run space dev, if you are in the Hello Tech World location, that's how you'll be able to run.
Okay, so I don't do it on the terminal that I'm in now.
Not on the Flask one. Make a new terminal.
Okay.
So click on the plus button to make a new terminal, and in there, you may need to CD into your web folder project. I don't know how you set it up. If you set it up like mine, you'll have to CD into another folder called Hello World, or whatever you ended up calling your React project. But get into
Okay,
there,
sure.
and then once you're in there, then run npm space run space dev.
Run space dev. It's doing something.
Perfect. So now if you go to your web page and go to localhost 3000, you should see your web page.
Localhost. What the hell is this one? 53. Localhost 3000. It pulls up. Welcome to next.js.
Yep. Do you see this is fun?
No, it looks like get started by editing pages or pages/index.js.
Yeah. So you never
Deploy.
yeah.
Learn.
So
Documentation.
you never deleted the default stuff. So in your index.js,
Oh.
in your index.js, delete a lot of the default stuff. You can keep some of it. Like I have, so I've basically deleted everything inside of the main tag. You can do the same thing. Once you do that, you then need to
Okay.
you can make a p tag or an h1 tag, whatever you want to do. But make sure you have this right here, this fun variable, in the format that I have it right now.
Okay, I'll do that real quick.
You're not calling get server stuff props anywhere, are you?
What?
Well, yeah, because I'm getting the fucking
Get
error
server
on
pride.
my.
Get server side props is an auto run function that will automatically run whenever you get the page,
Okay.
and it will automatically pass whatever it gets to your web page up here. I'll explain it more in a second once everyone gets on the same.
Oh, I think it's having.
All right.
Did you define? Oh, you did. Never mind. I found the problem. I didn't define. Fun.
So-
To make it real simple, legit, you guys can literally delete everything. Let me make it even less confusing. You can literally delete everything and copy exactly what I have.
Yeah, I just didn't pass. I didn't pass the fun variable into my.
Yeah, so I passed the variable, have the fun down. This is fun. Passed it in. I have the p tags with the fun surrounded by the curly braces,
Do you have a get server for like
and it
props?
just.
This part?
You said what?
This part.
Yeah, that I have that part. That this is fun inside props,
All right. Refresh your
and
page.
then it's just put. Oh, I see it.
So you see this is fun?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah,
Everyone seeing this is
I'm
fun
ready
then?
though.
I'm taking that as yes. Everyone's good now. Everyone sees this is fun getting printed out.
Yep.
All right, sweet. So props is short for properties. You'll see props used all the time. The proper term for React is called props. So this right here that I have highlighted is pretty much normal React code. This right here is the specialness of Next.js. Also, the pages folder that we have everything in is also Next.js specialness. So this right here is a special function called get server side props. So what happens is when the user reaches out to the web server and says, hey, give me the main web page, because that's what we're trying to get right now is the main web page, before the server actually gives you the main web page, it is going to run any logic that's in here on the server first. Do calculating, crunching numbers, whatever you want to do on the server. It's going to do this automatically on the server first. And the return statement returns this thing called props. Whatever you have inside of props is automatically going to be passed to your home function here for generating the web page. So, and you can use this format that I have right here. It's basically inside, just do those the curly braces in order to extract out the specific properties that you want. So we wanted the fun property, so we did this to specifically extract out the fun property. Once we have that fun property in our React code here, you'll see it kind of looks like HTML. It's not actually HTML. That's why these attributes like class name look different than normal vanilla HTML, because it's kind of like a fake HTML. But in here, when we want to use JavaScript variables we need to put them in curly braces. Yes, it's JSX is what this is specifically called. This is just simply the variable that's right here. To create variables in JS, so you can run on your web page custom logic, and you just need to put it before this return statement. So in here, we can make a variable. So we'll say var my cool var. That's how you make variables in JavaScript. You can make them also several different ways with let, and you can make it with const. Const is unchangeable after you make it, and let, I can't remember the surrounding stuff, but if you do var, you will basically get a normal variable. So if we say var my cool var is equal to, I don't know, hello world, we've now created our own variable that says my cool var and hello world. And if we go back to our code here and we do another curly brace and then type in my cool var in there and save, you'll see the page should auto refresh. If it doesn't, just refresh it yourself, and you see the text gets printed out on the page. So this is a cool way where it just shows how easy it is in React to make variables or any custom logic you want and then have it immediately render, or do stuff specific on the server side and then have it immediately render here. So now that we have server-side logic that's happening inside of here, we can now try to retrieve that data from the backend server that we made and then render it on our web page. So the steps that we'll want to follow first is inside of get server-side props, before the return, because this is logic we're having, we don't want to return immediately, we need to reach out to the web server, the backend web server, and grab the data that we want and then return it to the user. So, oh God, the code for that is a good question. Let me view some of my other code here real quick to grab that line. Here we go. So we're gonna need, let me erase this. This is basically the outline code that we want. Let's see, res JSON. So we're going to make a variable called res, and this is getting the request. and it's going to be equal to an await. An await is a special JavaScript thing that will, when you're doing an asynchronous call, which fetch is, it will sit there and wait and make it a synchronous call instead, and it won't perform any other logic until that is complete. The fetch is how we're going to get our backend data. What we need to put in the fetch is the location of our where our backend data is. So our backend data in this case is going to be at this address for me. It should be the same for the rest of you guys. It's going to be http // your local host :5000 and then a slash at the end. So this is going to reach out to our backend server, fetch and grab the data from that server, and once it fetches and grabs the data from that server, we're going to then have this line execute: await res.json. Basically, this is another asynchronous request call where basically it's going to expect a JSON return from the web page, which we are generating JSON text and sending it. So this will basically grab that JSON text and then put it in a variable, which we can then use right here. So once we have this, our JSON, if you remember from before, will have the string. Where is it in my Postman? It works. So I believe we don't have to do a dot results. We'll see in a second. But now instead of fun and having this equal to this is fun, instead replace that with our JSON results. Now that that's replaced with our JSON results, if we refresh our page, we're getting some errors. Perfect. Okay, so it looks like I believe it's going. Oh, let me check my Flask server. Make sure. Yep. So I believe it's going to be JSON results dot or results. There we go. There we go. So okay. So backend server. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. So you can I zoom in on Postman? So in our backend, we're returning some JSON data called with a key of results and then a value of it worked. Since this is a key of results, we need to do a dot results in order to get the data out of that key. So that's why I'm doing res.json, which is our JSON data we're getting. Dot results is going into the results key, and that will be putting the string now into this fun variable. The fun variable is getting passed and then getting displayed. So now when you refresh your screen, you should see it worked shows up. Are we all on this page right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. You guys have fully completed a front end and back end application, and they are now fully talking together. You have completed a full stack application. And just to stress that this is working and grabbing from the backend server, if we go in our app.py and we just, instead of just having it worked, we can do a bunch of gobbledygook in here. And actually, even better, we're going to, at the top here, let's do an import random. And in our code here, let's go ahead and make a random value. So if we do random dot random range, and we'll say between 0 and 1,000, and we're going to do results in that value instead this time. Now if we refresh our page, sorry, you'll have to, because Flask isn't auto, what do you call it, auto hot refreshing. Hold on, is there a Flask dev run? I swear it used to hot reload, but go ahead and do you'll have to cancel out a Flask, then you'll need to do a Flask run again, and then when you refresh your page, you'll see you'll get a random number every time. And if you keep refreshing your page, every single time you refresh, you're going to get a new random number. Just to kind of, drive home that you are fully connected to the backend server. Anyone have questions on that?
Would you mind? Well, I don't know what you have. Do you have any more stuff we're gonna go over right now?
What's your question?
This is more related to what we talked about before, where you have like your app.route there, moving towards like the class system. But if you have more stuff to go over first, then we don't have to do that right now.
Yeah, we'll move in that here in a second.
All right.
But everyone else is good right now on this. Are there any questions on the JavaScript side? What's going on in here?
So I do have one question. So programmatically, right? When you do something like this, right, where it has the get server side props, and you already have something defined, you have fun defined, right, and you have fun being passed into the function home, is because get server side props is ran every time the website loaded. Is that the reason why you can pass a variable fun without initializing it elsewhere besides in get server side props?
Yeah, so this is a dictionary. So you're you're making fun right here and defining it.
Right. So since it's defined there, and that since that function is getting called every time the server's ran, that's why you can literally just say, take whatever's in server-side props and just toss it into the function home.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And this isn't a so this is best practice to define, well, I guess it depends on your scenario. It's always good to define what you're expecting and putting it right here like we have right now, and then just grabbing fun. But technically, you can erase the fun part, remove the dot part, so you just have res JSON. This is proper JSON, and JSON literally is JavaScript. It's the JavaScript object. So you can do this because this is a full-on JavaScript object. And instead of fun up here, because we have no fun variable in our backend. The variable is called results. So this will work. We just need to now change this up here from fun to results, because that's what the backend is giving us. It's giving us that thing labeled results. So if we replace fun with results, because we completely removed fun down here and we're just passing the raw JSON we're getting from the backend server, this will fully work. And if we refresh,
You need to call it result dot.
Was it
Mirror JSON spec. You did fun dot result dot because you're still accessing.
I think is it literally looking for, hold on.
I think it's looking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, so yeah, we sorry, missed my syntax a little bit, but we can pass the full object over, and in here now we can just do the res JSON dot results instead of doing it inside of the fun variable, and we'll get the same output as we did before. So just different ways you can do it. Both can be correct on the certain scenarios, but I think for the most case it will always be more correct in most scenarios if you define your own custom names for everything in here and then just pass in the data that you want. All right, so we're fully hooked up to our backend. Are there any other questions right now before we move forward?
I do have one more question. In regards to your constants that you defined down there, right?
Yep.
Are those variables living in the application, like within the website right now?
No.
You can access them from your page. Okay.
No.
That's only that logic is only, or sorry, those variables are only defined when get server side props ran, and then they don't exist anymore, right?
Correct. This is
Okay.
this is server side code, and it's only ran on the server, so it's safe for anything secret that you don't want the user to see. The user can never ever get any of this data. All they'll ever see is whatever you return as props to this. So this public, this 100% private on the server only. So that's another thing is React in Next.js. You really need to be aware of your concepts between client and server, because you can write client and server side code at the same time in the same file. That is just fine. Just know what the limitations are. Also, Next.js is smart. So if you were to make custom functions out here, just a function that you only want to use internally here, if this function is only used in the server-side code, it will be compiled only for the server-side end, so it will be completely secret to the front-end user. But if you use this only on the client end, then it will also be forwarded to the client, and they'll have exposure to that code. And if you use it in both the server and the front, it will be given to both. So
the way you would get around that is, instead of using the function in the client, you would just pass a variable. Like, say you're doing some data parsing that you don't want the user to see, like if they did like an expect element, you would do all of that logic within your backend stuff and pass the value.
yeah, so the only thing the client will ever see is whatever's returned here. So technically, this logic also, my cool var here, isn't given to the client at all. It's only what's returned here, because the client is only getting the HTML page that is generated.
Okay.
So it's very safe in that sense.
Well, I can say I like that about JS more than HTML or anything else. Well, I guess React. Yeah.
Yeah, in vanilla React, everything is sent to the end user. They have access to all your code. When you're using Next.js, though, Next.js will cut them and keep them separate, and it will always give the user the smallest file size possible that's only applicable to what they're doing, because it generates an actual, potentially an HTML page.
Okay.
So let's see here. That's why also a lot of people, this goes into more technical aspects, but that's why people will always usually use Next.js, because the pages are made into HTML files, which means that your pages are indexable by search engines. If you use vanilla React, your pages aren't indexable in the same way as they are if you're using Next.js, because the React projects it just returns JavaScript code, and that JavaScript code then goes to the client's browser and then generates the page after the fact. So you can literally, on pure React websites, you could potentially have a blank screen for a quick second before the page generates, because it legitimately is downloading the JavaScript code and then running everything to generate the page. Different with Next.js. Next.js does all of the computation on server side, even if it's in here, and whatever is in the return is what's generated into an actual HTML file that's then given to you. All right. So also another functionality for Next.js, just so you guys are aware of, if you, in the pages folder, make a new file, let's call this billy.js. Now, since you guys have installed those special plugins, you can type in this special code to auto-generate a page for you in JavaScript. So if you type in RAFCE, so it will be this option right here, RAFCE, and you click on that, you'll automatically get all the code that you need automatically generated for you here for a functional React web page. That's this is literally how easy it is to make a new web page in your application. So now on our website, if we go to /Billy, just /Billy, nothing else, and press enter, you'll see that we have our new page that says Billy. And if I change this to something else, you'll see the text changes on here. Super easy to create new pages, and then we can add our custom logic in here. Now you'll see this kind of looks a little different formatting wise than this one. Specifically the export default function home right here at the front looks different than it does here. These are exactly the same. It's just formatted slightly different. Both work exactly the same. If you want it to look exactly the same way as this one, you can literally just delete this line of code here, and instead I'll just copy this so it's real quick. Replace the const with that, and then remove the equal sign in this arrow function. And it's the same thing, it's just generating slightly differently. I think if you do RA, so that's a functional component export. I think, no, that's not the one. I think the auto stuff always does it in that format. But regardless, don't worry about it. It's not concerning. This works exactly like how your other code works. And to show that, if we copy our server-side props from earlier, you can remove this context in here, by the way. You don't need that. But if we grab this code, exactly how it is, we go over to Billy, and we go ahead and paste that towards the bottom of our page. Same thing like before, inside of these parentheses right here, because these are the same parentheses as this one, we could even copy this right here from inside the home one. If we paste that in the parentheses here, and at the end of Billy, we'll go ahead and do fun, you'll see everything is working and functioning like it was before. So same thing, this is completely the same thing as the previous file, it's just formatted slightly different. Makes sense? Everyone tracking right now?
Yeah.
Eco, you good?
Oh yeah. Yep.
All right, sweet. All right, so let's see here. Let's expand upon our backend a little bit. So let's go switch back to our Python code. Let's make our backend a little bit cooler. And we're going to start by showing you guys how to expand upon it in a more proper way. 1 second to switch this. Sorry, I'm just pulling up my example code here real quick. Open back, and there we go, app.py. All right, so we're going to need to do another pip install. So your Flask app that's running, you can go in and just cancel and stop that from running. Once you stop that from running, let's go ahead and do a pip install Flask _ RESTful. I'll go ahead and copy this. It won't fly by so fast. I'm going to go and copy this and put this in the chat just in case you're having an issue. And that should install. Once that's installed, you can then now import this new statement. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. That will look like this. What are we doing? Why are we doing this right now? Well, the app that we have right now works, but if we want to add potentially a lot of different routes to our backend, this is going to get really cumbersome because we have to keep adding new functions on this, and the page is going to get really long, real quick, and it's going to get really annoying. So it's going to be better and more proper if we make it in using this API functionality that they have, which you'll see here in a second. So now with this API functionality, we need to introduce this new code where right after our app equals Flask name, we're going to put this code in here, where we're going to turn this app into an API. So we can start continuing forward as an API instead of just the normal default app. You'll see here in a second the power of actually using the API in the API framework, because by default Flask is big in the sense that it allows you to do APIs and fully functional web pages. But we don't care about the web page stuff. We just want to make this a fully functional API backend. So once we do that, now we can add API resources to our page here. And how we do that is a function called API resource. And let me go ahead and remove this stuff and my class. This is just going to be placeholder values, but this is how we can add resources to our endpoint. What are resources? Basically this right here, what we see right here. This is a resource. But now this will allow us to clean up our code so it looks a little nicer. Because anytime you have a main or an app.py, or app.py in this case is our main file, the main should be easily glanceable at to see what the overall project is doing, just the overall logic. Ideally, it should be as small as possible and have no actual custom functional code like this. Now this will allow us to make a new file to move this code to. So if we go in here and we make a new file in our backend, and we can call this, we're going to generate random numbers. So we're going to call this rand. Just call it rand. Don't call it random because you might run into issues. Just call it rand. So once we generate this new file called rand, we can go ahead and copy over that same import from earlier, the new one, the from RESTful import resource and API. And here, now we can create our endpoints, but now our endpoints are going to be objects. Don't be intimidated by it. It's super easy, and we're not making them from scratch. We're going based off of the resource object abstract class. So very simple. Basically, in this class, this is where we're going to be generating those random numbers. So we'll just call this randnums. And this is a child class of an abstract class. So the class that we're mimicking is called resource, which is being imported right here. So we'll go ahead and make that. And in our, I don't even think we need an initializer. We'll just go ahead and make an initializer and just import super init. That's all we need to do for this. All right, a lot of setup, a lot of big words, especially if you don't understand what inheritance is. Don't worry about that. This is all we need right now. And basically how the API works is, like I told you earlier, HTTP has functions like get, post, put, patch, etc. Now in this, if we want to have this handle get requests, it's very simple. In here, we just do def and get. And we make sure we have a self in here. And now this will handle a get request. And in here, we'll put our special get request logic, which was generating a random number, which means up here, we need to import random. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this logic right here. Paste it. So we're getting a random value. And after we get the random value, we're going to then put it in this results, and we're going to return my cool dick. That's a full get request. Now if we go back to app.py, we can delete this old code here. We need to access this new class we made called rand numbers. So that means here at the top, we need to import the file that we just made. So we'll do import rand, because that's the file we just made. And we'll just do import rand. So we're importing that file. So we need to get that class out of the file we just imported. So if we do rand.randnums, that is the class we just made. So we're saying on this API resource, I want you to use this class. So run this class for this API resource. And then here you can say wherever you want that whatever you want that API resource to get accessed from. So we just want this to be in the root. So we're just going to do a slash. There we go. We're done. We fully copied what we had before in proper API syntax. So now if you do a Flask run, your server will start running. If we go to Postman and click on run to test, you can see we're getting our results with a random number, which means if we go back to our web page, if we refresh, you'll see everything is still functioning exactly like how we had before. What questions do you guys have right now? I know that was a lot and it might not make too much sense right now, but I promise you it will make sense, especially at scale. Any questions?
So the initializer, right? The initializer, is that where you would do any initialization of anything that you would want the server to have? Or is that just essentially what it would be in JavaScript, right? Where some logic is running regardless of if they pick the get, the post, whatever.
In this?
Right, so you're doing an init, correct?
Yeah.
So whenever the website accesses the backend API call for randnums and they're trying to access get, the init is just going to do whatever logic or define whatever it needs every time that the class randnums is called.
Yes.
Right?
Every single time this endpoint is called, the object will be constructed from scratch, and this will be reran.
So, yeah. Every time. Okay. So if I wanted something that was ran every single time, I would just put it in there, regardless of what they pick. Okay.
Yeah. Zane, this is actually very simple, especially compared to other languages. If you don't understand this or you're not too familiar with classes, don't worry. You don't need to try to understand it right now. Just know you just need to type this, and this will work. And the other thing is you need to make sure, and anytime you define a function in a class, just make sure you put self in there. This isn't actually something you pass. You just need to put self in there. Just trust me on that one. Additionally, you can return in your return, you can actually make this a tuple. You don't actually have to make it a tuple. You can just put a comma there to auto make it into tuple. And the reason for this is if you want to give a custom error message. So if we go over to our Lord and Savior Google over here, and we type in HTTP messages, and we'll go and click on the first link here. This is not what I wanted. I'll just type in error messages because I can't oh, there we go. Status messages. This is so bright. Hold on. Status. HTTP status messages. There we go. You want to try to go to the Mozilla links if possible because they have all the good detailed information. But right here, this will tell you the custom or all the status messages you can do that are globally defined. So this is where we can do our custom status messages. So 200 we can put in here is a successful. You can see this if you go to Postman. 200 shows up right here. 200 okay. This is happening by default, but you can also manually define the message that you want to come through. So if we rerun this, you'll see 200 is right here. And if we're confused on what 200 is, if we look right here, it says 100 through 199 is for informational responses. 200 to 299 are for successful responses. Next is the 300s are for redirects, 400s are for client errors, and 500s are for server errors. So if we click on successful responses, it will take us down, and it says 200 means okay, which means everything went as planned, successful, happy, we saved the day. So that's what 200 is. This is also where you'll see other things, like if we go to the 400s for client errors, everyone knows, even if they don't know programming, 404, which is for not found. There's also 403 for forbidden, and so forth. So if you want to do a different message, like they actually did something that caused an error, so we wanted to tell people this is actually an error, you shouldn't be visiting this, we could give them like a 500, which is a server error. We're going to be telling them a server error happened, but in reality, everything is just working just fine. So if we, since Flask doesn't dynamically reload, we got to stop it, rerun it. Once we rerun it in Postman, if we send, you'll see that everything worked like before, but if you look right here, the 500 error came through, and it is interpreting it as an internal server error. So everything will work, but you're not actually adhering to the guidelines properly. This is kind of the Wild West if you're building your endpoints from scratch. Nothing is bounding you. There's no laws or rules that bound you to follow what you should be doing exactly. You can literally do all the things wrong. Instead of giving people an okay message every time, if you want, you could build it so it tells you you did a server error every time, but it's actually working successfully. You could do that if you want. I don't know why, but you could totally do that. Totally up to you. So this is how you can add error messages. So we'll go ahead and keep that at a 200, or you can remove it completely to just automatically do a 200. All right, sweet. Next, let's go ahead and make a post request to do some fun logic. So let's say def, and to do a post request, which is a different type of HTTP request, all we do is we say post. We want to make a post request. And inside here, what we'll do is we'll take the data that the user will give us. So the data that we get from the user is going to be colon and then the data. So this is the data that we get from the user that they sent us. And then in there, we can go ahead and get the data out. So we'll say we want them to give us a number. So we'll say num equals data and number. And from that number, we want to generate a random number and add it to the number they gave us. And then we'll just return back our new value. So I'll go ahead and copy that code from above. There we go. So again, we're getting data from the user. From that data, we need to get the number out. This is going to be JSON data, so we're looking for a key cold number, and that number will have some number data. Once we have that number data, we're going to add it with a random value, and once we have that new value, we're going to make our results, and then we're going to send it back to them. So to see this first, we'll test it out on Postman. So let me go and close the Flask server again, rerun it, so now the new code is running. On Postman, on Hello World here, I'll right click and add a new request. I'll change this from get to post, and then in here, I'll go ahead and put my URL. And if we run it as is, you'll see an error will happen. It literally says now an internal server error, and it says message internal server error, and you'll see a bunch of error code here. This is because we didn't pass it any data, and it was expecting us to pass data. So let's go and pass that data. On Postman, if we go over here to body, this is how we can pass data to the user. We need to select raw. So in body, you need to select raw, and then it will have this pop-up or drop-down that shows up. We'll change this from text to JSON because we're going to be sending JSON data. In here, we'll do our curly braces and press enter because we're making a JSON object. And we said right here in our Python code, we want a number, and that's the key value. So in here, we'll go ahead and do the 2 parentheses and number. So they expect us a number, and it needs to be proper JSON data, which means we need to have a key, colon, and then some type of value. And we're expecting a number value, so I'm going to do 500. Now, if I send, it shouldn't error out, but it did error out. So we need to figure out why it errored out this time. So real quick, I'll do a print right here, and I'll print data to the terminal so I can see what's going on. So let's go ahead and scroll up a little bit. Since I added new code, I need to rerun Flask. That's why I didn't see the error. There we go. Let's see here. Missing one required positional argument data. Let's see here. Post data. Data. Post. Let's see here. Exception. Post. Still not getting data. Let me look at my notes over here real quick. I think I forgot to add something. Let me go to Vo Stripe Pay. Requests. That's what it is. Okay. Let's remove this. And we need to add a new import because we're going to actually be extracting it from request. So instead, once we add this import here, we're going to be doing request dot data. We got to do JSON loads. So we're going to need to also import JSON. There we go. So this is getting from the request that happens. This is stuff that happens in the back end or in the background. This is the data that we were sent. This will make it into, this will accept the JSON data and then make it into a Python dictionary. And we'll call this data. And now this should work. And it did not work because I need to reload my code. Let me rerun that. There we go. And now it is fully functional and working. Any questions on that? Eco, any questions on that? Perfect. All right, sweet. So if you want to get data from the end user, you have to use request, and request.data is literally just this raw data here. And again, Python is not JavaScript. So when you're getting JSON data, which works immediately with JavaScript because it's JavaScript object notation, that's not Python. So you must first take it and turn it into Python readable code, which is going to be a dictionary by default. It will put in data, and then we can extract out that number and perform whatever logic we want, and then return a result. So now that we have this, we can do some more fun stuff on the front end of our site. So let's go ahead and go back to the front end side of stuff. So let me switch this from Postman to our web browser here, and we'll go ahead and switch back to our index page instead of Billy. All right, so inside of here, we already showed how to generate stuff through server-side props, but instead, let's do some fetching and refreshing of data real-time in the web browser itself. So in here, let's go ahead and create a form. And inside this form, let's go ahead and make an input box. and a submit button. What are they calling it now? Are they calling it button, or are they calling... I don't know what the newest for it, but what the proper stuff is for the new one, but we'll make this of type and then submit, and this will be type, and I believe it's just text. There we go, perfect. So you should get some stuff that looks like this. Everyone tracking so far? Now I'm gonna add a space between these guys because they don't have a space. There we go. Now that looks better. All right. So we got those two. Now we need to hook up our form to a function. So on submit. So when this gets submitted, we want this to run a function. So up here, we'll go ahead and make a function, and we'll call this submitting number. You can call this whatever you want. I'm just going to call it submitting number. And now I need to check my notes because where is this my, there we go. 1 second, let me check my notes just to make sure I got everything here correct. Store, where's my forum? Forum, where are you? Button, checkout. Okay, there's the button, there's the checkout. Cart. And we want to do handle. Okay. We're going to make this slightly different because it's going to be a asynchronous call since we're reaching out to the web server. Do we have to? I think we do. We'll move forward. I'm pretty sure it's going to cause an error, but we'll move forward anyways. We're going to add this code here. So basically, by default, whenever you submit a form, you can kind of see here if we, before we add any code, if I click on submit, you'll see here, you'll see a question mark gets added. And not only the question mark gets added, but you'll see the page, the loading icon comes up. Because by default, the normal default behavior for a web browser when you press the submit button is to reload the page. So we don't want that to happen. We just want things to auto happen without reloading the page because that's going to be really annoying. It would be really annoying if you were on Twitter, TikTok, wherever else you use Twitch, and you wanted to like or subscribe, and when you click that button, the entire page reloaded. It would be extremely annoying and might interrupt something that you're doing. So to stop that from happening, we add this line of code here, which prevents the default behavior, which is reloading of the page. So let's go ahead and connect this up. And right here on form, we're going to have it, so on submit, so when we submit something, we want it to call that function, which is called submitting number. Submitting number is not defined. There we go. I just mistyped it. All right, sweet. So this is fully hooked up now to this guy. So now if we click on submit, E is not defined. But why? Oh, it was just being weird at first. I think we're missing something else. Do you see an error that I'm not seeing? It It's supposed to be.
I do not. I came back in halfway.
Oh. Oh, I see. It's supposed to be. There we go. All right. There we go. Now if I click the submit button, you see that nothing is happening. All right, that's why I have E is just shorthand for event. So you could just call this event. We'll go ahead and call it event so it's longer. There we go. So the event is all of the event data from the submission is being passed to this function. So with that, there's a special thing called prevent defaults. So now if you click on the submit button, let me get rid of this question mark here so you can see it's actually working. If I click on the submit button, the page doesn't auto reload now. Additionally, to see that this is working correctly, to print to the console in your JavaScript here, we're going to do a console.log. Now you have the imports or the extensions that I have, which allow you, if you just type in log, the first option that shows up is a quick link to the code to generate the console.log. So if you do that and then press tab, you'll auto get this guy here. Now if we put some stuff in here, it worked. Now if we inspect the elements and we go over to our console and we look at our console here, every time we click the submit button, you'll see it works, gets printed out to the console. Any questions on that? Just emphasizing that our button, our submit form is 100% working. No questions. All right, let's move forward. So to get our data from the server, like we were doing before, exactly the same code as here. So before we do the post, let's just copy this data because we know this will work. So let's just get some known good code to test it out and make sure everything is working like before. Now, like I said before, I was pretty sure this await would show up. That's because this is asynchronous calls, and this function by default is only allowed to handle synchronous items. So we basically just need to say this is an asynchronous thing, which right here, is it right here? Let me see. I think it's at the beginning. There we go. So at the very beginning, we put async, and that will tell the browser that this is handling asynchronous data, and all those errors will go away. Now, instead of printing the console, it worked. Let's just copy res.json and put that here. And now if we press submit, things will blow up. It did not like that. Let's see here. Origin blocked. Okay. So right now we're running into a CORS issue, which also I don't understand because we're on the same. Oh, okay. So let's talk about CORS a little bit. CORS stands for cross origin request something. Let me type it in. What's the last? CORS. Cross-origin resource sharing. What is this? This is something that's been implemented into the modern web to help with exploitation. It's a security thing, and if it's a part of security, it means it's also a huge annoyance. But it's important to have it. So what's going on here and why we're getting this error, at least specifically for me, is the backend URL that I'm using is different than our web page URL. What I mean by that is literally the web page URL is localhost 3000, and this is just the straight up localhost IP address. So it doesn't say localhost. In the real world, the example would be you have your site called My Cool Site, which people are going to in the web browser to view your site. So this site right here would be mycoolsite.com that you own. And your backend server is on a different URL called mycoolbackendsite.com. Different URLs, different sites. Because they're different sites, by default, when you try to access a different site's data, you will be automatically denied. It is a security prevention thing to make sure people aren't grabbing data from somewhere that they don't belong. So you have to explicitly allow someone to do that. You'll see this error goes away if I were to change this to localhost. Now, if I change it to localhost and I click on the submit button, it is still not happy with that. I think that's because of the port also. So it's now also the port that's giving the issue. So regardless, I'll show you how to fix that. So we got it. This is an issue with our backend server. Our backend server isn't allowing other requests to be connected to it. So in our backend server, in our app.py, we need to allow for cores. So very simple to add. Let me go in and grab the import statement from here. Oh, we're gonna have to do another pip install. So let's stop our Flask application, and in here we're going to do a pip install flask _ cores. Let me grab this before it disappears, paste in the chat. There we go. Once we have that, then we can go ahead and add this import statement. I'll paste that in the chat also. And this gives us a new function that allows, by default, allows anyone to access our application. So it's super easy to add. All we gotta do is say cores, the thing that we just imported right here, and wrap our app in it. Bam, that's it. Now we allow for anyone to request our data. So if we do Flask run now and refresh our page on our web page and click on submit, everything will work now, and you'll see our results are getting printed out in the console. Any questions on that?
When you say they're on the different web page, you can still have stuff like other page dot website dot com. You can still use stuff like that, right? So say you're on website.com, you can still have like another page called otherpage.website.com, and you wouldn't get that error
Yes.
as long as they're on the same starting domain.
Yeah, and on the same port.
Okay.
So ideally, so in our Python code, this cores right here by default will open us up to everything, which means that anyone around the entire world can now access this API endpoint. You can specify, as you can see right now, this is the help list. In the help list, you can specify specific either domain names that can reach out to you, or specific IP addresses that can reach out and access this resource. But by default, it allows everyone. So you can then limit it to specific things that you want access to. But we're not going to get into that right now. All right, so everything's working now. And as you can see, when we click the submit, our stuff is working successfully, and we're getting the data from the endpoint. But this is the get endpoint, because by default, fetch will fetch the resource using the get HTTP function. But we don't want to use the get HTTP function. We want to use the, the post one. But before we even do that, we want to stop certain errors from happening. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes real quick. Specifically, the input they give, if there's nothing in here, we don't want this to actually go through. We want to stop and give like potentially an error message that says, hey, you didn't actually give me a number, so I'm not going to complete the request until you give me a number. So to do that, let's first, I'm just checking my notes real quick. Let's first give our input here an ID. This ID will be the way we can access this variable, or the potential data they put into it. And here we'll just say this is the user's number that they're giving us. Now up here at the top, we can, I'm gonna put it before the request, we can do event.target. I don't know why it's not showing up. And then dot whatever that variable that we're expecting is, which is going to be the user number, and we want to get the value from it. So if this value, we'll wrap this in an if statement. If this value, well, I guess we could do dot length just to be a little bit more specific. If the length of this value is equal to 0, that means they didn't fill it out. And since we're doing JavaScript, I need to put this in parentheses. And now we can do some special logic. Well, we want to return to make sure we end everything. But we could also do potentially some other stuff, like maybe give them an error message. I guess before we do the error message though, let's see if this is actually working. So now if we click the submit button, I'll go and refresh to get rid of my console logs here. If we click the submit button, you'll see absolutely nothing happens now. Nothing gets printed in my console. But once I type in some either letters, because we're not filtering based off of numbers only right now, letters or numbers, and I click submit, you'll see now it works functionally, because we are stopping anything from happening if the value length is 0. So there's absolutely nothing in it. We'll be bad front-end devs, and we'll just allow them to enter any type of value for now, and we'll just suffer the consequences. Does that make sense? The path here is I believe this is a React specific thing. Pretty much look this up if you want to figure out how to. Basically, event is standard. Target is the data from your form always, and then this will be whatever the form data is. Dot value is how to extract the data out of the variable, because it's a special type of form-based variable. And then length is just a JavaScript thing that's on pretty much every type of variable. So that's why I have length here. If you don't remember this, that's fine. Just Google it, and you'll get, there's plenty of Stack Overflow answers for you in regards to that. So let's actually, before we finish this, let's actually show some weird functionality of React. So up here at the beginning of our function, let's go ahead and make a new variable called myBigNumber, and we'll have this equal to 0. All right, and let's go ahead and have this also print out to the screen. So now you should get like a 0 printing out to the screen right here. Now let's have it so before our check here in our function, so before our check even happens, let's have it so our big number gets a number added to it. So every time we click this button, doesn't matter if they properly entered in input or not, we're always going to increase this number. Awesome. So I'm going to refresh my page here and click on submit. But it's something weird is happening. We're increasing this variable, which is definitely getting printed out here, but it's not increasing in its value here on the screen. And if to make it extra confusing, if we do a console log and we log my big number and we click submit now, you'll see the logs are printing the number's value, and it's 100% incrementing. So what is going on here? So by default, in React, all variables that you make are static. Their initial value is taken, and if you're putting it on the screen, it's generated, and that's it. That's that. This stuff right here is pretty much generated on the server side only, and the page is forwarded. If you want something to be sent over to the user side to be interacted with, you have to make a new special type of variable in React called a state variable, or whatever it's called. So to do this, we're going to need to add a new import at the top here of our React file that looks like this. I'll go ahead and send this in the chat, which will give us access to this function called useState. Now, to define this variable, it's a little weird, all right? But stick with me. Essentially, instead of making a variable like this, if you want it to be interactive after the fact, you'll declare it like this. So we'll go and do a const, because these guys will never change. And inside here, we're making two things. One is going to be my big number, and the second one is going to be set my big number. These are both variables, so you can have them named whatever you want, but this is how I'm going to name it, and it will make a little bit more sense here in a second. We're going to have it equal use state and then 0. A lot more confusing than this guy right here. And I'm going to go ahead and comment this out because it's going to cause issues since we already
You need use state or user?
sorry, use state. Mistyped there. All right, so let's see here. Getting errors, which are always pleasant, and I can't see what it says. X cannot reassign to variable declared with const. Okay, that's because of this. I'll get into that in a second. This is how we have to declare a variable if we want it to be usable by the end user in the sense where it's interactive. You're going to see there's two items here. The first item is a read-only variable. This means that whatever you do with this variable, this part right here is for reading the value output only. And this is write only. So if you want to update the value at all, this is how you can update it. Why it's like this, don't ask me, all right? It's like this. There's probably, hopefully, good reason behind it, all right? It's just the cancer of JavaScript. Welcome to JavaScript, all right? Get used to it. Smoke a pack of cigarettes while you're at it. It might help increase your life, because this definitely isn't, all right? The 0 here is because that's the default value. If you wanted a string, you could put a string here. In here, you just put whatever default value you want. So we want 0. So now, right here, where we're doing an addition, this, like I said before, is a read-only value. So we have to use set instead. So we'll do that, but this is a read-only, so we can't use shorthand either. So we have to do 1 plus my big number. Now, if we refresh, we still get an error. Const variable was declared here. Set my does not like my what's going on here? Const my big number, set my big number equals use state. Yes. Yes, you're correct. Sorry. This is a function. So let's wrap this like that. There we go. All right. Sorry, wasn't looking closely enough at my notes. So this is a function that is write only and will write what this new value will be. So if we want to increase the value of this item, we need to write it out like this. And now you'll see on screen where that 0 is. Every time we click the submit button, you'll see it now increases. So something to be aware of, that this is a thing that exists and it may cause you some cancer. We need to go over this for a couple of reasons. One, so you're aware of it, but two, we want to be good front-end devs and we want to tell people, hey, when you fucked up, hey, you fucked up. Because right now, when they click submit and nothing happens, it's very ambiguous to the user. Like, why did it not work? Is my internet not working? Is the server down? Like, why didn't it work? So a good way to handle this is you can make one of these guys, these use state items. We can go and make a new one called const, and we can call it show error. When the user messes up, we want to then show an error, and then we'll call this set error, and then we'll have it equal use state, and we'll just have this as a boolean equal to false. Sweet. So we now have this. So now we can go down to our JavaScript code. You know what? We'll make this a true right now so the error always shows. So when we're deving out our error message right now, it will show up. So we go back to our code down here. We want our error message to show up when they do a boo-boo. So let's go ahead and make our error message. So if let me double check my notes here real quick there we go. So if we do the curly braces and then enter, and on the top curly brace we do show error and an ampersand. Where's my ampersand at? I lost it. Ampersand. This is basically a super shorthand if statement for if this is true, then do the following. If this is false, then nothing will happen. So in here, we can then now have our HTML code. So let's go ahead and make an H1, and you messed up big time, buddy. And now when we save, you'll see that you messed up big time, buddy, shows up on the screen. So we know this is fully functional. And if we set this from true to false now, you'll see it goes away. So we know this is extra functional. So now, if we go inside of here to our if check that we're doing, instead of immediately returning, we can then in here do our set error, and we can set this error to true. So that way, when they don't give us a value, we can give them that error message. So now I don't have a value in here. I'm just going to click submit. Oh, I messed up. And now the user knows they've messed up. Any questions on that? All right. So let's get on to the last part. Actually doing our post. Took a while for us to get here, but we're finally here. So fetch can take a multitude of parameters. If we highlight over it, we can see that the first is our request info, and then we can give it also the a init, where we can initialize any additional items. So it's best if we press enter like this so we can space it out a little bit from the response that we get. So this is the request, this is the response. So we're going to want to, I'm going to space it out like this. So the first item is the URL we want to go to, and then the next item are going to be all the optional stuff. So this is a JSON item, or an object, I should say. So we can just do a comma right here, and then just make a blank object. Now inside this blank object, any valid HTTP header items are good to go in here. HTTP header and method and any other of it, other items. If you're confused on these, look them up to find the exact one you want to use. But one of the options we can use is called method. And here we can specify the HTTP function that we want to use. So by default, it's always using get, but we want to use post. And these are always going to be all caps. So now we're defining post. This will work now for posting. But the issue is, if we go back to our Postman and look at our example here, it's expecting this data also, which means we also need in here to pass that data, that number value. So after method, this is going to be inside of our body. You can even see here in Postman, it's inside the body section. So that means we need to set our body. And inside this body, we can't just send the raw JavaScript code. We have to do something called stringify, which is basically making the JavaScript into strings that can be sent across the internet. Also, I guess for cleanup sakes, we can set a custom header, so it's headers plural, and in here we'll specify that we're sending JSON data. So if we do content, I guess I don't need to do it in parentheses, content, or maybe I do, I don't know. Content type colon application slash JSON. Perfect. We'll go ahead and do that. And for our body, we'll go ahead and set our body, and it needs anything that we're sending that's JavaScript, we need to stringify it in order for it to send across the web properly. So we'll go ahead and write that function. And then in here, we need to then send our data, which needs to be an object. And our object is going to have a key called results, and then a value called whatever the value they sent us, which is going to be an event slash target slash user number dot value. I don't know why I said slash earlier. And I'm missing a comma right here. There we go. This is our full request. Once we have this, we'll just do the console log right now. So if we bring up our browser again and click on submit, that is, now we need to enter in some type of number, let's say 50, and click on submit, and we're getting an internal server error. Let's see here. So our backend server is blowing up. I think we're supposed to send result, not results. Oh, sorry, number. We're supposed to send number, not results. So if we click on submit again, there we go. It is working. Hold on, let me refresh here. It is still erroring. It says that can only concatenate string, not an integer to string. So basically another error that we're having on the back end of stuff, and specifically we're setting the number and it looks like it's making it into a string, and we can look specifically in our browser. If we go to network, let me go and clear this, and click on submit again, and you'll see our submit request is right here. And we can look at our data that we sent. Why is the data not showing up? I think it's right here somewhere. It should have it as a preview. I don't know why it's not showing it unless there's another issue. So let's go to our backend server to see what's going on. Specifically, let's add a print statement to print what we're receiving. So let's go in here. I already turned off my server. Let's go before everything. Let's just do a print and then request dot data. So this thing right here, before we do the JSON loads, let's just print the raw data from it and see what's going on. So let's go ahead and bring up the web server again. I'll click on the submit button and let's look through here. It looks like it's sending the number as a string. So there's two ways we can fix this. Way number one, we could cast that number into an integer on here. Or number two, it should be, we could cast it in the front end. You know what? We'll just do it on the back end because we're good devs and we do all of our data validation on the back end, not on the front end, because the back end is still vulnerable to bad requests if you don't do validation on the back end. So in here, we'll go ahead and wrap this with an int so we can cast it to an integer. And we'll go ahead and end our server, rerun it, click on submit, and now it is working. And if we go to console, you can see we're getting our results. So this is fully functional now. To get these results to print on the screen though, we can't just print that variable because I just showed you guys normal variables don't get auto refreshed on the screen. So we need to use those special variables. Are there any questions so far? I've been debugging for a long time. Yeah, make sure you use all of the browser tools. They're really, really good for your web dev stuff. All right, so let's see here. We need to make a new variable here. We'll call this const result and set result. And we'll have this equal to use state. And by default, we'll have it as null. So we'll have absolutely nothing inside of it. We want it set to null. So by default, nothing gets printed at all. We don't want like, a 0 or something to show up on the screen because 0 might be a valid number they get back. If they, put in 0 here as their base number and it randomly generates a 0 to be added to their 0, 0 is a valid number. So we don't want, zeros to be printed. We just want nothing to be printed until they get valid numbers. So now we'll go all the way over here and we'll make an H2 that says the result. And this result will have it, we'll put this in a paragraph, and then we'll say result. I did call it result singular, right? Yeah. All right, perfect. So our result will get printed here, and now when we save, you'll see absolutely nothing gets printed underneath. And if we want to be even fancier and not even have this show up, let me put a colon right here because I think that's going to look better. There we go. We could do the same logic we did here with the error. So we can do our result. Maybe this will work. I think this is, I don't know how JavaScript evaluates Boolean variables, but we'll see here, I guess, in a second. Why is this erroring? One parent element. Okay, so what that means is it wants everything in one single div. So we'll wrap this all inside of one single div. Oh, crap. Delete the wrong one. There we go. Okay, so I guess that works. I guess we'll see here when we submit something. So null also evaluates to something like false. Perfect. Now, if we go in here and we say 500, if everything works, 500 should be sent to the server. The server will then generate a random number, add it to our 500, send it back to us, and it will display on the page. And we're not setting the variable in here. One second. That would help. Set result, and we need the res JSON dot, and we're calling it results. There we go. Let's do this again. Bam. When I click the submit button, this stuff now shows up, and it prints our result. Awesome. So we got a pretty cool site going on here. It's going back to our backend, pinging it. We made a post request. We've made get requests. We're using the two different types of variables that they have in React. We have dynamic elements on our web page that show up at certain times. Ones that show up when things are successful. Another one that shows up if things are not successful. I guess to also get rid of this error message when something is successful, you can have it when down here where you're setting the results. You can set your error back to false so it goes away. So now this error is showing up, and when I have a successful result, it will now go away. So just some cleanup that we can have going on. Any questions on that? Any questions at all? That's pretty much the end of our beginner course here. We've made a full stack, as a review, we've made a full stack application using React for the front end and using Python for the back end. This is properly setting up API endpoints. And if you want to add more API resources, you just copy and paste this. So just to emphasize, I'm going to go ahead and just copy this beginning one into a new file, and whoops, not in the PyCache, and call this test.py. And here I'll just call this cool test. This only has the get function, and on our app.py we need to import our new file, so import test. In here it would be test.cool test, I believe is what we called it. Hold on, what do we call it? Yeah, we called it cool test. I think test is an actual Python module. We'll call it test with 2 T's. Let me rename this. Yeah, you gotta watch out with Python modules that have the exact same name as your local ones, so you don't run into issues. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. It's still not showing up, but whatever. You can't have 2 items with the same endpoints, so this one we'll just call it endpoint/test. If I rerun my Flask to show that it's working, if we go to Postman, make a new request, it's going to be our URL/test this time, because right here it says /test. So this time it's going to be /test to ping it. If we ping it, you'll see we get a random number that gets returned. Just so you guys see a more complete picture of you add more classes and then you add the resources here. And you don't need to add new files for, you don't need to have one class per file. You can have as many classes you want in here, but it allows you now to have different files to categorize what different classes might be in regards to. And then you can make it here. And you can't reuse classes. So if I try to reuse my rand nums and I try to relaunch the server, it's going to error out because you can only have one class per endpoint only. Any other last minute questions? Any last minute things you want me to explain a little bit more, go over, talk about?
Don't worry, I'll be in your room in a bit to bother you about it. Yeah.
Backend can be in any language. JSON is the typical universal intermediate language that gets passed between services. So it doesn't have to be website. It could be your game server or something else. JSON is the typical default. It used to be XML, but XML is really text heavy. So there's a lot of overhead and bandwidth. So things usually default now to JSON data. But the languages don't matter because as long as you're passing predictable data between them, like JSON, you just read that in and interpret it however you need to, and there you go.
I personally prefer Python. I just think it's a lot easier. JSON is very versatile.
Yeah, if you want to do it all in JavaScript and be a cancerous little shit, you can. Inside of Pages, you've probably noticed a folder called API. And in here, you can make API endpoints like we have in Python, but make it in JavaScript instead. And this is actually running right now. You should have a hello.js. And if you go to your web page right now, on your actual web server part, and you do /API/hello, you'll get the code here that runs, and you'll get the endpoint data. Whoops. So you can do it. What do you call it? Next.js allows for you developing the full stack right here inside of Next.js. So you wouldn't have to stand up a Flask server or Python or whatever you want. You could do it all here, but I will judge you. You can totally do it, but I would always recommend from doing that. I would highly recommend utilizing any other language, Java, Python, Golang, C#, whatever else. Any other questions? Yeah, I usually just delete this API folder. It doesn't need to be here. You can just completely remove it if you want.
Yo, I don't have any questions, but to learn that terminal stuff, what kind of YouTube?
It,
It's called what?
I'm just
You have
saying
access.
root.
You have access to our Learn site, right?
Oh, yeah, I have that.
So if you go to our Learn site, and you go to literally like programming can't really like you can't be a programmer, and you shouldn't pursue programming like further without first learning the basic terminal commands. And I'm not like we go over the ones for permission settings and stuff like that. Honestly, the most important ones you need to know, I'll write them out right here, are going to be ls. Oh god, shortcut stuff. Let me write them here in the readme. You need to know for a fact ls cat move the cd chmod less is always good. Well, if you're doing less, you might as well learn. So there's 4 items that are pretty much the same. That includes, they have a fun little acronym, how you say it properly. What is it? Less, head, more, tail. All right. So those are, is it more? I feel, hold on. Is it more?
Yes.
Okay. So less head, more tail. Those are all different ways to view a file, because cat gives you the entire file, but these will give you just like specific things. And PWD you need to know for a
Also
fact.
Touch. You should also touch.
I mean, yeah, touches and yeah, you should know. I mean, all of these we go over in the course, but these are like the most important like ones that you need to know and be comfortable with at a baseline.
Okay.
I don't think there's any. I guess man and anything that you need help on, you do pretty much tac h or tac help on to get it. And this isn't a standalone command. This is like a compound command. So for example, like if you're confused on how Python works, you can do attack h and you'll get pretty much a huge help page that gets printed out. Or npm, if you do attack h on that, you'll get a massive help page that gets printed out. Sometimes tac h won't work, and instead it's expecting a tac help. So that's just another tidbit.
Okay. But they're the same.
They are the
Yep.
same. Just
Okay.
different devs support different versions of it.
Mm.
All right, sweet. Any other questions?
I don't have any right now. I'll have some for you tomorrow, though.
All right, sweet.
Thanks,
All right.
man.
All right, I'll see you guys.
Peace.